not, let me encourage you to check him out. I'll put a link for you down in the the box below to his YouTube channel, and the video that is in part inspiration for this video. His video was called Case Knives, and I think the subtitle is something like Let's See Your Knives Too, or something like that. And I had been thinking about a similar idea about shooting a video on my case knives and encouraging people to post video replies so I could see more about other people's collections. This is my collection, such as it is. Actually, I do have one or two other case knives that are not in this video. My video was going to feature case knives first, best, and last. First Knives FBL. Partly because, this is pretty much all I got. But also partly I thought that it might make for an interesting short video that everybody could shoot a short video on and participate in without having to have really impressive knives, because I do not have really impressive knives. I am not a case knife collector per se, except for what you see. I am a case knife user or haver. I have them and I use them. But the other inspiration for this video was what I was thinking about in terms of doing this video on my own before I saw Dogo's video. I was thinking about philosophy of use. So here's what happened for me. So I'm, a couple of weeks ago getting dressed, and I go into my drawer to grab an EDC blade for the day, and I happen to spot this little brown wonder sitting in the back of the drawer looking very much lost and forgotten, and I felt so bad. I was like, oh, I haven't carried this guy in years, many, many, many years. And it got me thinking about, just the days when I used to carry this knife and why I carried it and why I don't carry it these days. I did carry it a few days, 3 or 4 days, just for old time's sake. As I was thinking through what I wanted to share on this video, so this got me to philosophy of use. So besides wanting to show you a couple of knives that I have, I wanted to talk about philosophy of use for case knives in particular. Slip joint knives in particular, in general, I suppose, and then case knives in particular. So here's the thing. I got this knife probably in 1977. Okay, let's not count how many years ago that was. And I got it for a job that I had, for a summer job that, went on through the school year for, as I had free time. My mom and my stepdad owned a stereo radio and CB radio installation and sales store. And so they hired me on as an installer in summers. And so I needed a blade for doing installation. Back then, this was also called a wire stripper. It was called a hole puncher. It was called a trimmer and an edger. You could do all kind of things with this little knife. It certainly was not called an EDC blade. It was just called a pocket knife. And for obvious reasons, you carried it in your pocket. Now, for those of you who are interested in history, we call these pocket knives as opposed to sheath knife knives, which you carried in a sheath on your belt. Some of those were folders back then, and some of them were fixed blade knives. But anyhow, this was a knife which was basically purchased and used as a tool. But like so many knives of that generation, these are well-made knives and they last for a long time, and now there's history attached to this, personal history. Probably not much of value to anybody except for my children. I'm sure they'll appreciate and value it. There's a lot of fun, stories that I have with this little knife. The time I nearly cut my finger off. That's maybe not so much fun, but it's kind of entertaining now that I'm much more mature and past it. But probably the funner stories are really the job that I had was installing, CB radios and stereos. And if talking about CB radios doesn't date me, not much else on this video will. But yeah, that was back in the heyday where having CB radios was quite a thing. So I was installing stereos and radios in, Mack trucks and Whites and Freightliners, all kind of commercial vehicles as well as private vehicles like, you know, Porsches and Corvettes and Dodge Darts. Um, what else do we had? Buick Rivieras, you know, Ford, what were those, Fairlanes, and Ford Galaxies. Man, I've crawled around in some of the greatest and worst cars in history. I remember AMC Gremlins. Do you guys remember AMC Gremlins, American Motor Corporation? Oh my gosh. That was either kind of the most fabulous car on the planet or just the most awful idea ever generated. Depends on who you talk to. So this knife has a lot of history for me. But apart from that, it goes to philosophy of use. And, you know, it just blew my mind thinking about the fact that a philosophy of use for a case knife today is collector. I know, it just, you know, to me, back in the 70s when I got this knife, it just would not have occurred to me to take this knife and the little, you know, brown paper wrapper that it was in and the little bitty box and stick the whole thing, shebang, knife and all, unused, unsharpened, in a drawer and leave it there for a couple decades. Bring it down on Sundays and show it my neighbors. I didn't know, it just wasn't a thing, at least not in my world. Maybe that was in somebody else's world, but not in my world. These were tools. They were not considered collectibles, to my knowledge, anyway. Certainly not many people I knew back then had money to be spending on knives they weren't using. Money was a little bit harder to come by, I suppose, in some ways. But nonetheless, now collecting is a philosophy of use for case knives. So let's look at these knives. Oh, I'm sorry, I just knocked you guys nearly into next week. All right, we'll straighten the camera back out. So let's look at the Tang stamp here. We can get a date rolling. Let's see, left is right, right is left. Let's see if I can. Okay, so there we've got a pretty good shot. This is a Case XX USA with 4 dots on it. Assuming everybody can see that. And the knife overall is not in great shape. It's got a little chip. I'm sorry, right is left, left is right. I gotta work backwards. Let's get the light on again so we can see it. Right there, you can see right around that. And I don't know how in the world I managed to chip that. Obviously I didn't buy it that way. Not only did I chip that, but I managed to shift the plate stack. I don't know if it shows up on camera or not. In fact, the camera's not focusing real well today. But there's almost a curve. And you can hear me grabbing the edges there. You shouldn't be able to hear that. So whatever I did, sure was a doozy. But I learned how to sharpen knives with this blade. My grandpa taught me how in his little workshop in South Carolina. There's a lot of history. So now this knife is a collector knife. So we looked at that Tang stamp. Dougo, if you see this video, if you want to comment on the fine art of interpreting the Tang stamps on case knives, I've seen a couple of different explanations. I've actually seen this particular mark dated as far back as 65. And then I've seen other sources which date this as a 1970s only mark. So 70 through 79. And then with 10 dots. This has 4 dots, so if you're following the 1970s interpretation, that would make this a 1976 production knife, and that fits with my other story, my life story, so I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to say this is a 1976 run, and I probably did get it in 77. It's possible I might have got it in 76. I can't really remember, to be honest. But either way, it's been a long time. But for everyday carry, I really don't use a pocket knife like this anymore. I use the clip style knife, and I use that because they're just easier to get to. So this is a little Kershaw blade, and this is a what is it called? Kin Onion design, and I forget what model this is. Usually says on it somewhere. So this is October of '04. and it's a 1600 BW, but they don't have the little name of it on there. Anyway, it's a little one, little guy, and you can see compared to this jackknife, this bigger, you know, it's like 2 3/4 instead of 3 inches on the handle. But the nice thing with these little knives is that you can clip them to your pocket, and then it's easy to get them out. The other nice thing is you have single-handed deploy, and you can also put it away with one hand if you are careful. Versus this kind of knife, you got to have 2 hands to work with. And if for whatever reason you are missing a hand, or you have a hand which isn't fully functional, or if just in the task you're doing that you only have one hand available, this knife becomes a bit of a problem, but this knife is not. So philosophy of use, again. So I'm just curious, what are you guys thinking about philosophy of use with your case knives these days, or your slip joint knives? If you guys carry other knives that are, or other slip joint knives made by other manufacturers other than Case. I am also interested in that idea. This has kind of fallen out of my philosophy of use favor. So this sits in the drawer. But it sits in a drawer in good company. And this goes to the other philosophy of use, which is collectibles. And so here we have a nice little example of a 2010 production run on a Case peanut knife. This has the beautiful stag bone handles with the pick design, and I think really beautifully colored scales. And darn, there goes that darn camera again, not focusing. If I come in and give you guys a tight shot, if it'll focus. You know, some days it wants to cooperate and some days it does not, but I can do it this way. We'll cheat. Get you a little closer view there. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful knife. I don't know if you can see the line, these very subtle, graceful curves to the line of the handle and how it carries on into the blade. And those curves are very functional. Makes for a great thumb purchase on the back. Yeah, there's no jimping, but you know, it still does fit the thumb perfectly well. And then you've got great purchase with your first and second fingers on the opposite side. So you can really give good control over that blade. And yeah, it's a small blade, but you know, this is a nice EDC blade. Wow, I just poked that into the tip of my finger, and holy smokes. I thought I was drawing blood for a second. I don't see any. Okay. No, I did. Look at that. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to show that on camera. Nobody wants to see blood and faint. So it's just a little dot. No big deal. But it just shows you how sharp these knives are. So this is the kind of knife that you can carry in your pocket all day long and not even know it's there. Really, just very unobtrusive. This size knife is a lot larger and makes itself known, certainly in some situations, in a much more profound fashion than a smaller knife like the peanut. But, you know, I get it why people want to collect these knives. I just think that's doggone gorgeous. I really, really do. I really think that's beautiful. I think that's art, okay? Yeah, I know it's tool, but it's also art. So let's look at the other art here. Let's look at this one. This is a trapper model, and do I have it right set up? Yeah, and there's the paperwork on it. This is, sorry, my pager going off there. This is the Woodland Spider series, I believe they call this. So this is the large trapper, and we'll take a look at that. Again, another beautiful knife. Just the fit and finish on these. I know these are not as good a quality as some of the older Case knives where there was just like one guy making the knife from start to finish and he paid attention to every little single detail. I know that there are very slight problems with most Case knives, but I got to tell you, still, really, seriously, still really, really rocks. I mean, it's just really excellent quality, especially if you've ever held a knife made by a lesser manufacturer, let's say. I won't name any names. But you can see this is a serialized knife, so there we have number 760. I think this is out of 1,000 on this run. I'm not really sure. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but got my fingerprints all over it now. If you guys want to see the date on this, this one is exact same Ting stamp as the peanut knife, so I'll just show you this one. And as you can see, it has the swoopy how do you say that? The swoopy C on the case, part of the logo, and then double X, and then it's got X's and dots on it. So this one has one dot missing, and that makes it a 2011 run if I understand things correctly, and perhaps I don't. But that's generally how I think it's done. Okay, so there we have 3 knives from case history. My very first case knife, my very most recent last case knife, and I think what's my best case knife. I'm going to be getting a little more into collecting of knives just for kind of collection and for the sake of the channel here. You guys have been really great subscribers, and some of the advertising is kicking in some money, so I'm going to kick that back to you guys. So I'm buying a few things here or there so I can show you some more videos and keep it interesting and keep some variety going. But for today's sake, I hope you've enjoyed our little conversation about case knives, philosophy of use, my first, last, and best, and I really hope to see some of your videos in reply. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your subscriptions, and always enjoy and appreciate your comments. So hope you guys are having a great week, and I will see you next time.